Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Chair One Home Care. Very glad you are joining us, however you may be joining us. We appreciate it. And, we have to bring to you reports sometimes that are difficult. One of those that we need to bring to you today was we welcome in First Lieutenant Blake Tabor, Chairman Parish Sheriff's Office, Public Information Officer. First and foremost, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. And you guys do such a very difficult job. And I can tell you, just being in social work, being in social work school, finding out the volume of situations where we have some inappropriate behaviors by people who take advantage of especially minors is just difficult to swallow. And it doesn't matter what culture thinks that may or may not be okay. It is not okay. We're so very glad that your SVU unit does so well at being able to identify, track down, and hold people accountable. So tell us a little bit about this situation, if you don't mind, Blake.
So on November 6th, our patrol division received a call for service on High Ridge. It was in reference to a mother who had found some digital images and videos on her victim's cell phone device that were pretty alarming and disturbing. Our patrol deputies responded to that. They were able to confirm the digital evidence that was a part of this case, and they were able to quickly determine a suspect in the case as well as an additional victim.
Wow. So not only did they find out that this was a situation happening with one child, they found out that there was a second.
That's correct.
And then they found and identified the individual. So we can
Yep. And then so, from there, our SVU detectives responded, which, is a protocol that we follow in these types of cases. Our detectives are very well seasoned, and they're very good at handling these types of investigations. So we were able to find and locate the second victim and then ultimately take the male perpetrator into custody as well.
And that male perpetrator is Elgin Peter Billiot,
That's
73,
correct.
of Homa. And he was arrested on 2 counts of molestation of a juvenile under the age of 13 and first-degree rape in connection with that investigation.
That's correct.
He's pictured there. And just one of the things that I think, if there's anybody who has any thoughts about any inappropriate behavior with anyone, that's an example of why you don't do it.
Absolutely.
If you have those thoughts, don't act on those, because we are always wanting to tell family members, if you see something, say something. And kudos to this parent who said, this doesn't look right.
Absolutely. And look, these things can be not only disturbing, but very alarming for a parent to find, especially just, monitoring, daily monitoring of a child's cell phone. And you come across these images or these videos, it could be very disturbing. So, our heart goes out to not only the victim, but the families of the victims that have to deal with the aftermath of this violence, senseless violence,
right,
perpetrated on them by someone like this offender.
And it's sexual trauma.
Absolutely.
And it is by far, as a clinician, the most difficult type of trauma to overcome, because it's not accidental trauma. It's not trauma by somebody typically that we don't know, as you and your team knows most of the time. There's not a specific percentage, but most of the time it's somebody that they know, and that these people prey on others, and they use power and control to tell them not to tell anybody and that it's okay, and they normalize it. They've got to completely reframe that trauma as they try to recover from this.
Absolutely. And, and I think it's pretty powerful what you said, when you use the words prey, power, and control, because, we have to remember that these victims were under the age of 13. That in no way indicates that over the age of 13, that this should be okay, because it's not.
No.
But for all intents and purposes, these are babies.
Yes.
And there's a reason why a certain segment of the population that commit these types of offenses target these kids, is because of the prey, the power, and the control. And I can tell you, our SVU detectives do an amazing job at dealing with this. It's a very difficult faction of investigations to deal with. But they are very well versed in how to handle that. And I can tell you that we take these cases extremely seriously, and this is not going to be tolerated in our parish. We will do everything in our power to make sure that we put every single offender away for this.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things. And we want to make sure that we empower the public to be able to use that word in a more positive sense, to going from power and control over somebody that is too young to understand it all the time. Empower the public to be able to say, if you hear something, say something.
Absolutely.
Ask. And guess what? If nothing's going on, okay, that's
Absolutely.
okay. But at least let our specialists investigate to find out, because we never want this to go on one time, one moment, 1 second longer than it should or has to.
Absolutely. And look, the See Something, Say Something initiative doesn't just apply to these types of cases.
Right.
This runs the gamut of everything that we do, from seeing someone that appears to be suspicious in a parking lot, to hearing a rumor mill on the street when your children are playing with other children. It's extremely important. And again, I want to go back to, a lot of things these days can be blown out of proportion very easily.
Right.
That's why it is extremely paramount to allow the professional detectives to make the determinations. These types of cases elicit very strong personal feelings within the victims and the families, and,
Right.
and just the loved ones in general.
Right.
So, what we try to do is we try to err on the side of caution, and we try to make sure that everyone stays calm and allow us to do our investigation to get to the truth, because that's what's important.
It will stay private while it needs to stay private, and it will become public when it needs to become public.
Absolutely.
And your SVU team does that. Blake, thanks so much for coming on. Sorry that it's under these situations and circumstances. The good news is we're not going to tolerate in our community.
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, and that will do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A lot more Bayou time when we continue.